Good afternoon. So this is just a very quick talk about nihilism. It's a word you hear a lot, and not a lot of people are entirely clear about what it means. So let me try and explain what nihilism is, how nihilism comes to be a view that some people have, and what the problems are with nihilism, and finally how to overcome nihilism if you find yourself falling into the trap of believing in it. So first of all, what is nihilism? So the word comes from a Latin word, nihil, as in annihilate, meaning to destroy or to make nothing, to make something into nothing, to completely destroy. So nihilism is a view that says nothing is real. So you and me, this video, the world, the earth, the sun, human beings, love, kindness, all of these things, according to nihilism, are just nothing. They're not real, they don't matter, they don't really exist. They're nothing. Right. Now, personally, I don't believe that. I think that as Descartes said, cogito ergo sum, that is, I think, there's something here thinking, therefore there's something here that exists, I am. That's a good refutation of nihilism. I think, therefore I am. Another one is, I feel, therefore I am. I can feel something, therefore there's something here that can feel, and also there's something in the external world that causes me to feel that, or to sense that, whether we're feeling through any of the five senses, for instance. So if I see something, then firstly I must exist, and secondly there must be something there that I see. Now, it's true that the thing I see might not be exactly what I think it is, and probably isn't for various reasons. Sometimes it might be the thing I think it is as well. But sometimes the things we see might be illusions, or we might see it in a distorted way, maybe because of different conditioning or prejudices that we have. We might see things that look like something that they're not sometimes. But still, when we see something, there's something there. Even if it's not what we think it is, there's something there, something real. And that's enough to disprove nihilism, because nihilism says, no, nothing is real. So why is nihilism popular in a way now? Why are there people promoting nihilism? This goes back a long way, actually. You could argue that Socrates, who a lot of people think was a very clever man, Socrates arguably promoted nihilism. Socrates' method of arguing, according to the very vague and incomplete records that we have of a man who lived 2,500 years ago. What Socrates' method was to go to an expert on something, for instance, an expert on war, and maybe a general who's fought in lots of wars, and say, but how do you know anything at all about war? Are you sure? Do you actually know anything? And by a process of logical questioning, he tried to prove that the expert in war actually knew nothing, and that therefore that he, Socrates, knew more than the expert, because he said, I know that I know nothing, and you don't even know that, so I know more than you. Of course, this is complete nonsense. If you put Socrates on the battlefield compared to the experienced warrior on the battlefield, it would rapidly become evident that Socrates was not very good at fighting, and the other guy probably was quite good at fighting. But That's what happens with abstract intellectual debate, where there's no grounding, there's no reality in it. And this can happen in modern debates as well. It can happen online, where you have two people arguing a view, and one of them actually knows what he's talking about, and the other one is just using the Socratic method, so promoting nihilism, basically saying, oh, nobody knows anything, so therefore you don't know what you're talking about. And in an abstract debate where there's no evidence and no physical reality to the debate, it's all just happening in a virtual sphere where it's just empty words being used, it can appear that the nihilist is making a winning argument. It can appear that saying, oh, nobody knows anything, is actually a stronger argument than, for instance, a scientist or an expert in a field who actually knows something about something and is saying, well, actually it's like this. I know it's like this because I've seen it and I've done it and I know about it. But the nihilist says, no, you can't prove that. Nobody knows anything. And so this is a very attractive argument for trolls and fools and people who don't know what they're talking about. It's very good for politicians who know they're wrong, who know that their policies have failed, for example. But when someone comes along who's maybe an expert or somebody who's lived through the consequences of these policies and says your policies failed, the politician can say, but nobody knows anything, it's all just speculation, there's no evidence. So nihilism is very useful if you're a fraud. It's very useful for pretending that real things aren't real. So you can see why nihilism is popular in the world today, and you can also maybe begin to see how dangerous nihilism is. If we allow nihilism into the universities and into the schools, and you have teachers and lecturers promoting nihilism as if it's a valid argument, then what that does is it undermines the validity of all of science, of all of art, all of human civilization, because the nihilist can just respond to everything. But nothing is real. Nothing matters. You can't prove anything. So therefore, your work is worthless. This is very dangerous because it undermines everything, especially if we allow that to be used to make funding decisions, for instance. So this is a real problem in universities in the UK. The funding is often allocated to nihilist researchers and nihilist professors, especially what we might call woke, postmodern, so-called critical theory adherents who are promoting this idea that nothing has value, nothing is real. Critical theory really argues, it starts off from nihilism, but then it tags on some more contradictory nonsense on top of that, claiming that nothing is real except that power is real and that people construct narratives in order to acquire power, and therefore the only reason why people construct narratives is to acquire power. That's a completely wrong theory. People actually use narratives primarily to try to understand the world. So if you're a scientist, you try to construct a narrative of the world that matches the observations that you make in your experiments. If you're an artist, you try to construct artwork that maybe expresses the kind of narrative that you feel, or that you want to put forward as a possible explanation or a possible way of understanding the world. So narratives are quite important, and human beings use them for lots of different reasons. We don't just use them to acquire power. People who are nasty, psychopathic, power-hungry individuals use narrative as a means to acquire power. But most of us use narrative because we're trying to find out the truth. We want to put forward a narrative and see if it's true or not. That is the scientific method. In fact, we put forward a hypothesis, in other words, a narrative, and then we see if that's true or not. We test it using experiments. If it's false, we reject it. If the experimental results confirm it, then we carry on using that narrative and maybe look for ways to increase the level of detail, or to find out boundary cases, or to expand it and test it in different conditions. And so in that way we find out more and more of the truth. But nihilists deny that there is any truth. So to a nihilist, the whole scientific method is just nonsense. It's just like a dog running around chasing its own tail. If that was true, then the products of science wouldn't work. So, for example, this smartphone that I'm recording this video on clearly works. It works because science works, and science works because nihilism is false. So, one other place where we find nihilism is some of the ancient Indian teachings. Not all the ancient Indian teachings, fortunately, but especially some types of Buddhism, especially Japanese Zen Buddhism is quite prone to this. Really, all of Mahayana has some elements of nihilism within it. The classic line from Nagarjuna is, form is emptiness, and emptiness is form, which can be taken, if you only take the first half of it, form is emptiness, and leave it there, then that can be taken as meaning everything is just empty, everything is nothing, so nothing matters, so it's all just meaningless. Of course, that's not what it says. It says the next bit as well. Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. In other words, if you try to reduce everything to nothing, your nothing has a strange way of suddenly taking form again and becoming everything. That's maybe a more difficult point. Maybe want to go into at length in another video. But it's often misinterpreted. A lot of quite serious Buddhists are really nihilists, and they haven't seen the error of that. I think most of the really good Buddhists, the kind of Buddhists who have succeeded in the sense of being happy, radiating love and compassion into the world and so on, of which there are many, I think that kind of Buddhist rejects nihilism, and they're quite happy with both of those sentences. Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. In other words, there is such a thing as form. The Buddha said that all existing things have three qualities: anicca, anatta, and dukkha, meaning anicca is impermanence, that is, everything is changing. And notice that things can't change unless they exist. So that one already, just the fact of anicca, the fact that things are changing, already proves that nihilism is wrong, because a thing couldn't change unless it exists first. So it exists, it's real, and it's changing. Yeah, if you look at me, I exist, I'm real, and I'm changing. The me who is here now is not the same as the me who was here at the start of this little video. Then there's anatta, which says that there's no core or heart or essence of anything that is permanent, that is independent, that is not changing. So that's really a corollary of the first one. It's a corollary of anicca. It's saying not only is everything changing, but also every part of everything is changing. So not only am I changing, but also my nose is changing, my mouth is changing, my identity is changing. Everything about me is changing in every moment. There's no fixed core that doesn't change. There's no fixed identity that doesn't change. You know, a lot of people like to believe that they're still the same person that they were 10 years ago, or they're still the same person they were when they were a child. But they like to believe that there's some little core, something in the heart that hasn't changed. But Buddhism says no, there isn't. Everything is changing. There's nothing about you that's the same as the being that you were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So, anicca, anatta, and the last one, dukkha, meaning suffering, that all things that are real can cause suffering. And again, that's another thing that disproves nihilism. Suffering disproves nihilism. If nothing was real, how could anything suffer? How could you suffer? And of course we all suffer. It's part of the human condition that we suffer. And Buddhism says everything can cause suffering. Not that it necessarily is causing suffering right now, but everything has the power to cause suffering. For example, this chair I'm sitting on right now is nice and comfortable, but if I was to sit here for 24 hours without moving, then this chair would become a serious cause of suffering. It would hurt, right? And this is true of everything. If you think about it, everything can become a cause of suffering. And the fact that it can become a cause of suffering proves that it exists. So that also refutes nihilism. So, I hope that explains a little bit about nihilism. Thank you for listening. I hope you're happy and well, and happy that you exist, happy that I exist, happy that the world exists.